to go. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, guests, MLAs, reporters, invited stakeholders. I'm Damien Healy with Cabinet Communications. Also, good morning to our Facebook Live streamers. Today, we have an important announcement on Support Assistance Initiative. We have two speakers today, Minister Cleveland, Education, Culture, and Employment, and YK1 Superintendent, Ms. Shirley Zubeliz. We'll have lots of time for question and answers. We have Minister Cleveland speaking first, YK1 Superintendent speaking second. After our speakers are concluded, we'll open it up to media for questions. We have lots of time for one question, one follow-up, more if needed. For the members of the media, please introduce yourselves as they don't know your names. I do. And also speak loudly for our virtual streamers, excuse me, so they can hear your questions online as well. As always, if there's questions we don't have the answer to now and we need follow-up, press secretary would be happy to answer your questions. We can get to those afterwards if needed. With that said, I'd like to invite Minister Caitlin Cleveland, Education, Culture, and Employment to provide some opening comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning and thank you for being here, everyone. Today I'm announcing the launch of the Support Assistance Initiative, a territorial investment of up to $14 million to ensure that students across the Northwest Territories continue receiving the support they need as they return to school. This initiative is a direct response to recent federal changes to Jordan's Principle, changes that have already had real consequences for our schools, our teachers, and most importantly, our students. In recent months, schools across the territory have had to lay off much-needed support assistance. These are the staff who work most closely with students facing trauma, mental health challenges, and the intergenerational impacts of colonialism and residential schools. Their work is essential, not optional. Since 2018, education bodies in the Northwest Territories have accessed over $211 million through Jordan's Principle and the Inuit Child First Initiative. Support assistant positions were the single largest category of approval requests. The GNWT has been urging the federal government since February of 2025 to reconsider these changes. In the Northwest Territories, Jordan's Principle has never been supplemental. It has been essential. Rolling back these supports now would risk years of progress in building safe, inclusive, equitable learning environments. While Ottawa has recently indicated that its operating procedures are under further review, students are returning to school now, and they need certainty. That's why we're stepping in with up to $14 million of interim funding to support education bodies that have not received the funding they have applied for. Let me be clear, this is not a long-term solution. Territorial resources are limited. We're acting today because students can't wait. But this funding is temporary. The federal government must commit to a permanent, fully funded model, one that reflects the realities of Northern education and is co-developed with Indigenous and territorial partners. In the meantime, we will continue to stand with Indigenous governments, MLAs, families, communities, and most importantly, students. Today's announcement is about more than funding. It is about protecting every child's right to a safe, inclusive, and supportive learning environment. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Minister Cleveland. My name is Shirley Zubeliz. I'm the superintendent of YK1 here in Yellowknife. I'm also the chair of the Northwest Territories Superintendents Association. I am very pleased that there continues to be collective advocacy for these critical student supports occurring across the Northwest Territories. Our efforts have been effective and our voice is heard. The introduction of Education, Culture, and Employment's Support Assistance Initiative for the 2025-2026 school year is an important response to changes in Jordan's Principle funding and will be well received. This initiative is an essential step in maintaining continuity for students who rely on daily, consistent support to succeed in the classroom. Across the territory, we have seen the difference support assistance make, not only academically, but in fostering connection, trust, and emotional well-being. While this interim funding provides much-needed relief, we echo the call for a long-term, federally supported solution that ensures Indigenous students receive the care and opportunity they deserve now and into the future. We welcome this commitment and we will continue our advocacy to meet the needs of all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Superintendent. We also have Mr. James Fulford, Deputy Minister, Education, Culture, and Employment, available to answer questions from media as well. With that said, we can open the floor for media questions. I have 4 reporters here, and we have a lot of time for questions. So to start, we'll go one question, one follow-up. Ollie, would you like to start? Nice and loud for the streamers to hear as well.
Yeah, sure thing. Ollie Williams, Cabin Radio. Question for either or both of Minister and Shirley. Give us a sense of what $14 million does in this space. We know that 200 or so educational systems were funded through global principle up to this point. What does $14 million pay for? How many positions and how long?
Thank you for the question, Ollie. So our focus here is on maintaining the consistency of the classroom assistants in all the classrooms across the territory. That said, we know that multiple school boards do have multi-year funding agreements, and if they do have a multi-year funding agreement, they can maintain that staffing for this upcoming school year. So our intention is to maintain the existing cohort of classroom assistants, the existing number that are in classrooms across the territory. Thank you.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up? Possibly then more for Shirley than the Minister, although I might appreciate your comments as well. Where will we find the people to work the jobs now that we have the money? Because, of course, we lost a lot of people who were told in May or June or even before that their positions were going. They've probably moved on with their lives. How are we going to start the positions that we now know we're going to be able to pay for, at least temporarily?
Thank you. That's a good question, Ollie. We have already reached out to staff to ask them if they're interested in being on our guest teacher list. So staff that were in our schools, we have a significant number who have returned as substitutes. So we do have an extensive list for that. I can't speak to the rest of the Northwest Territories. However, that's our first plan.
Jocelyn seems to be the question.
My question is, we have these questions earlier. What is the reason?
Thank you for the question. So we've been advocating, as you say, since February of 2025. So as soon as this information came out, we were immediately working with our education partners. We were working with other jurisdictions. I've been on the phone since February and having meetings with the education ministers from the other territories as well. And so in that time, we weren't simply waiting. We were working with our education partners. We were trying to work with the federal government to say, hey, we want to work with you on this. We want to be partners on the work that you're doing, but we need to make sure that we maintain consistency for the education system within the Northwest Territories while we do that. It became clear to us that while we're getting positive indicators from the federal government, it doesn't line up with our school year, and we need to make sure that we prioritize students in the territory. I had the opportunity to sit down with education leaders in June and did put the question to them as to how we work together to address this situation. And so we have been working consistently and continuously on this all year. And we are now in a position to be able to support this with this $14 million initiative. So not all, but most of our education bodies do carry surpluses. If they do not have the surpluses to fund this, or if their surpluses have been earmarked for other projects that are already down the road, that's why this funding does exist. And at the end of the day, we have the backs of our education system understanding the importance of the work they do and valuing the momentum that we're seeing within graduation rates of students, especially in small communities across the territory. And we need to work together in order to maintain that momentum because we're not prepared to lose sight of that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Of the $14 million, how was that number determined?
Thank you so much. So that number was determined by looking at the cost per classroom assistant based on an average across the territory, given that the rate of pay does change depending on a community that somebody does live in. But we took the average of our classroom assistants across the territory, the greatest number that we would expect to receive in applications from our education bodies, and came up with the 14 million.
Christian, yes, Christian better from negative. Unexpected thing is how many jobs are you creating or maintaining with this fund?
So Jordan's principal has funded about 205 classroom assistants or support assistants across the Northwest Territories in the last year. We do know that many of our education bodies are on multi-year funding agreements, which means that they will be able to maintain their staffing levels regardless. And so this is intended to maintain that number of 205 so we can ensure stability within our education system for this year.
How many students will benefit from this fund?
Thank you. I would say that every student in the Northwest Territories benefits from having students and peers in their classroom receiving the supports that they need.
We'll go around again. All of you have a question for them.
Yeah, to the minister, what has the federal government, what have the federal ministers told you in recent weeks about how their thoughts on this are evolving? Because their public front to us as reporters is basically there's not a lot seems to be changing. There might be a review come the budget. What are they telling you?
We're hearing much the same thing, that we can expect to get some clarity on this once the budget does roll out. So we are watching very closely to see how information does continue to come out of the federal government as they do announce their fall budget. That said, we continue to remind them how life is different in the North, how we operate different in the North, and how we have limited ways to pivot and fund federal programs that are no longer funded by the federal government. We don't have deep pockets. We can't afford to fund federal programs, but in this case, we certainly cannot afford not to.
And a follow-up to that, if I may, will you be asking for this money back when you get to have that conversation with the federal government?
I will always advocate for more money to come to the territory. The intent of the program here is for us as the GNWT to be the funder of last resort. And so the ask for education bodies is that they do continue to send in their applications. They that is supposed to be their first point of contact to continue to apply for Jordan's principal. And should they either not receive a response or receive a denial, then that's when this program and this initiative kicks in. But our intent is to continue to see those dollars from Jordan's principal flow into the territory because they're very much needed and they're very well used. Our education bodies have been able to work with the federal government and that programming, and our intent is to be able to continue to stack funding on top of that so that we're all working together for the improvement of education outcomes in the territory, and we will continue to do so. So our inclusive schooling review is still carrying forward. We can all agree that our education system has changed dramatically. Our students have changed drastically in the last decade since that policy was put in place. And so it's very important work that's being done. This funding will flow forward in this school year regardless of that work because while they are connected at the end of the day in that they are working hard to ensure students are supported, they are filling different roles within the territory at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the logistical piece of what we're trying to accomplish. And I think it's actually an exciting piece of what we've tried to accomplish or what we're trying to accomplish. We have a system. We use the collective agreement. So it is site-based that we're looking at each school where these folks were placed previously. I don't think it's going to be considered a burden to make sure that these are reinstated, I would say. So we're looking forward to that opportunity.
One year, you know, the question is next month. Okay. Christian, you have another question? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I come to ask my question. I immediately forgot the question that I had in mind. Here it is. Shirley, I just want to elaborate a little bit on bringing people back to fill these jobs. I'm sure it's not an ideal time. The moment the school year is starting to be trying to find a couple hundred people to fill positions across the territory. I recognize you can only direct people like you want to chair superintendents as well. What can you tell parents, or what would you give parents by way of guidance as to when they can expect the classrooms their students are in to be operating kind of sort of the way they would have been last year in terms of stuff?
Previous to the end of last year, we have, and true of every year, Ollie, we go through all of our students, student by student, as a review. We look to how we're going to support the student regardless of the situation that we find ourselves in. We have done that already. We've made provision for students currently in classrooms right now as we speak. We've also considered what would happen if we were to get funding. So those Plan B, Plan C have already been worked out. So in terms of what I would say to parents, continue to be patient with us. We will do our best to get this rolling as quickly as we can. If we are in fact able to do this, my intention is to do this, but that's kind of what I would say to parents, be patient with us.
Christian? I'd like to invite Mr. Cleveland just to have a few closing remarks and we'll conclude the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today. I think it's important that we reiterate at the end of the day that while we don't have deep pockets to step into the space that was created by the federal government, we can't afford not to, because at the end of the day, we need to ensure that we are supportive of our students, our families, parents, and teachers. Our school system has become reliant on this funding, and it is imperative that we do not leave our school system in shambles at the end of the day. In addition to that, I think it's important that we're very clear that we will continue to advocate to the federal government to explain why this system has changed education in the Northwest Territories and how it has changed education in the Northwest Territories. And I intend to keep that advocacy up, not only on my own, but with my cabinet colleagues who have been incredibly dedicated to this alongside me, as well as ministers from other territories who I appreciate their advocacy alongside me, because we are absolutely stronger together. Thank you for coming today.
That concludes it. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Deputy Minister. The stream will be on the Cabinet Communications Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. If there's questions you think of afterwards, once again, hit Press Secretary or the Manager of Communications for Education, Culture, and Employment. Thank you, everybody, for coming.